and welcome to GameSack, and this is a very dumb episode. We are talking about games with stupid names, dumb names, and we've also got Dave, who is pretty dumb himself.
Joe, that's just plain rude, and I'm sure the comments are going to reflect your rudeness, but yeah, these are just dumb-sounding names. I mean, there's games out there where you pick up the box and you look at them like, what? What does that say? Or it's just, you know what it says, and you're like, who made this crap up? And you just put it back on the shelf because, whatever, you don't want to play it. But in reality, you might be missing a decent game.
Indeed. So let's check some of these out. This one is called, well, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Zezes, Zezes, Zexzes. Anyway, this is an interesting little game from Hudson Soft on the NES. You play as Apollo, an armored dude trying to save the planet from evil alien robots. And of course, there's also a princess somewhere who needs to be rescued. The game starts out as a platformer of sorts with you blasting enemies to defeat them. Many of them leave behind E icons. This is the money system used here, so collect as much E as you can. Sometimes you'll see an L icon and that'll fill up your life bar. It's pretty easy to take damage here, so you're going to want to grab these anytime you can as well. It takes a bit to become acquainted with how this game works, so don't give up right away because it can be frustrating. Anyway, you can enter doors to buy new power-ups, get advice, and other things. Some rooms will have an entity that you need to beat to get a star, and you can't exit the level without getting that star first. Oh, and in order to find this guy, you need to first reveal his hidden doorway. But that's pretty easy, it's usually found by just shooting one of the star blocks. After this, you'll go inside a base of some sort. The gameplay remains the same here, but now you can advance through floors by jumping into tubes. Eventually you'll encounter a vehicle that you can ride, but be careful because it costs money to use, so make sure you have enough. Riding these turns the game into a shooter, and here you can collect speed and power icons to improve your ability. And at the end of the screen you get to choose whether to take the low or the high path. Only one of these is the right way, and if you choose wrongly, you're going to have to do that sub-level over again. It's usually no big deal though. Once you get to the end, you'll hop out and continue on foot. Wander around some more, and then suddenly you're fighting the boss. The control is pretty damn good. It's responsive and accurate, and that's definitely needed here. You're still going to be getting hit quite a lot though. Learning enemy patterns is paramount to success, and there are some bizarre patterns that'll throw you off when you first encounter them. Overall, there's a surprising amount of depth and variety in this game. The graphics are fairly sparse in spots, but overall they're pleasant. The music is also really good and definitely adds to the experience. It makes me sad that the sound effects cause the music to cut out a lot though. It makes it really hard to enjoy the tunes in the shooter levels. You're gonna need to ask yourself if you want to stop shooting and enjoy the music, or keep shooting and actually get somewhere in the game. Obviously that's a no-brainer, but a sound test would have been nice. This game never really sold very well, likely because of its stupid name. I recall seeing magazine ads for this one back in the day, but nobody ever talked about it, not even when the internet came around. I guess maybe nobody has any fond memories of this one? I don't know. But when I saw this one at a thrift shop somewhere a decade ago, I couldn't pass it up. I literally bought it because of the dumb name. I didn't expect much, and the game definitely exceeded that. I'm actually glad to own it, and in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't really inflated too terribly much in price these days. This is one of those quirky, overlooked NES games that's, what's the term? A hidden gem?
Hidden gems?
Anyway, check this one out and give it a chance to grow on you.
Here's Xanadu for the NES, developed by Hudson Soft and released in 1989. So is it Xanadu or Xanadu? It's actually Xanadu. So what in the heck is a Xanadu? We know that Xanadu means a place of luxury and contentment and was a summer home for the Mongol ruler Kublai Khan. We also know that the band Rush has an amazing song titled Xanadu with awesome lyrics like, "For I have dined on honeydew and drink the milk of paradise." Now that's some good stuff right there. But what is Xanadu? One thought is that it's combined from words Famicom and Xanadu. The Japanese seem to love to combine words, so this seems very likely. It's also a sequel to the game Xanadu, which is a spin-off of Falcom's Dragon Slayer series that was released on lots of Japanese PCs in the 80s. In the end, does it really matter? Because the only thing that should matter is if the game's fun or not. You take the role of an elven warrior who's come back home, which is a huge treat to find that it's been ruined because its water sources have been blocked up. The king sets you off on a quest to find out what's going on and your adventure begins. The gameplay is a side-scrolling action RPG style. You start the game by buying weapons and magic from the money that the king gave to you. When you kill enemies, they drop money or food. As you play, you realize which enemies will drop what. At certain points, I did a bit of grinding to save up enough money to buy a longsword, armor, and other things like flying boots. Some of the items that you get use a timer when you equip them, like the flying boots here, so get what you need done and don't mess around. Townspeople will give you hints all along the way, so pay attention to what they say or you're gonna get stuck. There's no map screen or anything like that, and that's okay since the game is pretty linear. You'll find some locked doors on your way, but luckily there's a handy store that sells keys that's kind of close by. To me, the key salesman looks a lot like Bill Murray, and I laugh every time I'm buying a key and I read the text with his voice in my head. Be sure to buy multiple keys though, because the doors that you use them on will lock automatically once they close. I mean, look at this BS. I use the J key to open up this door and I fight a couple of enemies and I accidentally push up on the control pad, which takes me back outside the door. Can I get right back in there? Nope. The door's locked again, and the key that I used before apparently has just disappeared into thin air. It's a tad frustrating, but what are you gonna do? Your player control's a bit stiff, and by this I mean that you can't kneel down to attack enemies that are lower to the ground or to duck out of the way of others. It's strange to get used to, and even to this day playing this game I still try and push down to attack lower enemies. The enemy patterns are annoying, and most of them will jump right over you when you walk towards them. If you don't time it right, they'll land on you, and your elven warrior really isn't that good at close combat fighting. And when you die, you'll start back at the last time you meditated or found peace at the guru's house. When you see the guru, he'll sometimes give you a title. Besides being a cool name, your title will define how much money and strength that you'll have after coming back alive. But as always with games like this, see a guru and get passwords as often as possible. There's many times when you'll have accomplished quite a few tasks and then you die just to get thrown way back and have to do them all again. But luckily there's a pretty good soundtrack to listen to while you're redoing everything that you've done all over again. The music is very catchy for the most part and it's purely nostalgic for me. I do like the graphics in this game, but I'm not overly fond of the color palette. My biggest complaint is when objects in the background are the same color as the background. Like here where there's these metal rings hanging on the wall. Why are they the same color as the bricks? Same goes with the window shutters, why can't they be a different color? Yeah, I know it's nitpicky, but I'm getting a little bit OCD by it all. Well, despite this game having a strange name, it's really fun to play and still damn cheap, so go ahead and buy it.
Do you like video games about gladiators? Well then how about Vegs Tactical Gladiator for the TurboGrafx-16? Vegs? Vegas? Viagas? Vigus? Viaguis? Anyway, this is a mech game that has absolutely no right to exist. In fact, it should be nominated for the most awkward controlling game ever. Despite being a tactical gladiator, there's no actual gladiating in this game. Basically, evil aliens have taken over the Pacific coast and now it's up to you as some weird robot to save it. Each stage auto-scrolls and you're left to attack the enemies as they appear on screen. Yeah, it sounds easy, but have you ever tried to play this mess of a game? Pressing left or right will slide your robot left or right. Pressing the 2 button attacks with your left arm. This is your short-range weapon, which is pretty much just a punch. Pressing button 1 attacks with your right arm. This one shoots your long-range weapon. You jump by pressing up on the D-pad. And you change directions by pressing down. And this is where it gets really cumbersome. Changing directions takes a while and it often happens when you don't want it to. You turn around to attack an enemy and by the time you do, he's on the other side of you, so now you've got to turn back around. Fortunately, you're invincible while you're turning around, and this is also the only way to really defend yourself. I don't know, I guess I just really like my death robot facing left or right when I press left or right on the D-pad, but hey, that's just me. There's also a lot of enemies that appear on the ground that can't be hit with your arm attacks. Should I press down and fire to crouch and attack? Of course not, that'll turn you around. Instead, you need to fire your body shot, which shoots at a downward angle. And you do this by pressing both attack buttons at the same time. And let me tell you, this is incredibly annoying. This all probably wouldn't be so bad if there weren't so many things arriving on the screen all the time. There's just no way to effectively deal with all of them. Anyway, after you fight through each stage, you end up fighting a boss just like you'd expect. Between stages, you can power up each part of your body by spending the points you earned in the previous level. You can also take points away and apply them to other parts if you need them in later stages. This is as tactical as the game gets and is probably the best part. Each arm is self-explanatory, but you've also got to worry about your body shot and your shields. And vernier? Yep, that's your jumping energy. Granted, it recharges when you're on the ground, but that's just another thing to mess with you as you play. I rarely power up the vernier since I just don't jump a lot, but you're going to need to in level 5 just to make it over some of these lava pits. The on-screen HUD has a lot of info about how you're doing, but honestly, I don't really pay attention to it. As you take damage, different parts of your tactical gladiator will break down. Your head is usually the first thing to go, and you can still play fine with a broken head. And then your arms start to die, which makes you unable to attack except with your body shot, and that is a huge chore to use. And this can't even damage some of the bosses, so you are screwed. After that, you die, and there's no continues. The graphics are kind of nice, if a bit repetitive. It has some decent parallax scrolling that's not often seen in HuCard games. The music really isn't anything special, at all. In fact, the best thing that I can say about it is that at least it's in stereo. If it were better, perhaps it would help me want to keep trying to improve my skills with this game, but no. Oh, and take a look at the box art. Look at your robot. This poor bastard has absolutely no face. And the top of his right shoulder seems to be attached to the front of his chest. Can you imagine trying to fight off dozens of enemies surrounding you in real life if you had no face? You wouldn't be able to tell what you're doing or even get your bearings. Well, that's exactly how it feels to play this game. Honestly, I'm not sure why NEC chose to bring this out to the US market. They must have been absolutely desperate to release anything they could. Even if this game had an awesome name like Super Robot Death Machine 2000, it would still suck. Well, actually, that would probably be kinda cool. But maybe the name sucks in order to keep people from buying it and experiencing the numbness of life that results. I don't remember when I picked this one up, but I sure as hell hope it was cheap.
Speaking of dumb names, what exactly is a retifer? I mean, really?
Well, it's better than white. That's so generic.
Yeah, but
talk about generic. I'd rather have a dumb name than a generic name.
But everybody knows it. White.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, let's get back to these games.
Dummy. This is Super Magnetic Neo, developed by Genki and released in 2000 for the Sega Dreamcast. That was 17 years ago. Sheesh, where has time gone? At first glance, this seems like a fairly normal sounding title. It's still strange to say out loud, and when people hear you say Super Magnetic Neo, they look at you like, what did you just say? Super Magnetic Neo. In this game, you take the role of Neo, who is a hyperactive robot. It's your duty to rid Pow Pow Park, which is an amusement park, of the Pinky Gang who've taken over. The evil Pinky Gang sets all sorts of magnetic traps for you and has unleashed enemy robots to make sure you don't succeed. But they haven't realized yet that not only are you magnetic, you're super magnetic. You have the ability to blast north and south polarized magnetic fields from your very oddly shaped head. I mean, just look at that ugly head. Besides that, Neo really isn't a good-looking character to begin with. He's got those tight white pants on that show off his butt cheeks, and really, who wants to see that besides me? I mean, not me. Remember when it was really cool that your character had animations that they would do while you're away from your controller and forgot to pause the game? Neo has a lot of them here, and his ugly face with that stupid smile just makes you want to punch him. It's pretty safe to say that I'm not a fan of the character design. The game, on the other hand, is better and has moments of frustration and enjoyment. The enjoyment is that the game plays a lot like Crash Bandicoot. You have 4 main levels and then a boss fight. The levels are completely linear, and you mostly run into the screen platforming, taking care of enemies, and collecting coins. And there's also some side-scrolling levels here and there for some variety. The platforming is interesting, and using the polarized fields of his head is fun to do and can make the game very challenging. Each magnetic field has a button on the controller. One represents red and the other blue. All you have to do is push the right button to activate the platform, which propels you into the air or along a zip line. But don't hold in the button too long or you'll deplete the power of the magnetic field. On the bottom left of the screen is a gauge, so be mindful of it. Once you let go of the button, the gauge will fill up pretty quickly, so you don't have to wait too long. Of course, Neo can also run and jump, but those are a given and don't need explanation. Another thing that I enjoyed here are the graphics. Each level is loaded with color, and I don't even think Nintendo uses this much color in their games. The music, on the other hand, is just there, and you won't really notice it since it's so unmemorable. In fact, as I was writing this, my first thought was there music in the game? I mean, I really couldn't remember. And all those Z tokens throughout the stage, be sure to collect them. Getting 100 of them gives you an extra life and you're gonna need them. This brings me to some of the more frustrating aspects of this title. Firstly, everything is a one-hit death. If you touch an enemy, bye-bye. If you touch an ice shard, bye-bye. In general, I can accept this if the game is programmed right. The problem is there's a few issues with the platforming. There's been many times where I go to make a jump but end up falling into a hole or something similar. I push the button in enough time to make the jump, but nope, down I go. Secondly, it's hard to judge where platforms are sometimes when you're trying to land on them. This has led to many deaths, but I keep plugging away because I really want to see more of the game. Each time you die, you'll start from a checkpoint if you reached one. The nice thing about this is that the number of Z coins that you've collected doesn't reset when you die, but the Z coins themselves will reset on the level. So just keep collecting them because they're all over and it's pretty easy to keep getting 1-ups. So what this all boils down to is that Super Magnetic Neo is just an average game. It does have fun moments while you're playing, but they're not as often as you'd like them to be. I'd say that if you can get this game really cheap, then it's worth it, but I'll leave that up to you to decide.
Here's Tough Enough for the Super Nintendo by Jalico. I mean, right away you can see that the name's pretty dumb. Tough Enough. But it's actually dumber than that. Look at the box, manual, and even the cartridge. That's right, the full name is, "Hey punk, are you tough enough? Master the moves to master me!" And you've got to say it like that, otherwise you're getting it wrong. It's no wonder that this fighting game flew right off of the store shelves. Oh wait, it didn't. It should have though. I mean, that name is so awful that it's good. You just can't stop thinking about it. Is it mocking me? Does it think that I'm not tough enough? And why would I want to master this guy? But I tell you, I've just got to put him in his place. Anyway, like I said, this one is a fighting game. You get to pick from a very generous roster of a whopping 4 characters who have 4 attack buttons, and they consist of light and strong punch and kick moves. The shoulder buttons don't do anything. You're trying to defeat Jade, the evil fighting king who rules the world. Naturally, he'll relinquish his powers if someone beats him up. At first, I had a lot of issues playing this. I couldn't even win the first battle. That's because the timing is definitely off in this game, and if you want your attacks to work, you need to press the button sooner than you otherwise would in normal fighting games. There's some special moves here, not a ton of them, but a few. And I had problems here and there doing them consistently. I think I was doing the controller motions too fast for the game. If I did them more slowly, they'd work, but usually by the time I was done doing the move, my opponent's foot would make contact with my face. Still, once I adapted to the weird timing of the gameplay, I was able to do pretty well. But that doesn't mean I'm saying that this is a great game that's lots of fun once you figure it out. No. In fact, it's a very mediocre fighting game. Just the kind you try to see capitalize on Street Fighter II's sudden popularity. This one came out in 1993, the same year as Street Fighter II Turbo. So it seems odd that you can only play as 4 different characters in the 1-player mode. Even in the 2-player mode, you need to perform a code in order to play as other characters. Besides the 1-player story and the 2-player versus mode, there's a single-player versus CPU mode. This one lets you select an opponent and fight them without going through the game. What's weird is that the 1-player story mode has a password feature. There's only 10 stages in all, and it's not horribly difficult, so I'm wondering why the developers deem this necessary. Well, there is one guy that's pretty tough, and that's Kaze here. Yes, his name is Kaze. Anyway, he has such a reach that it's really hard to get close enough to hit him. He kicked my ass many times. In the end, it turned out that I had to master the moves in order to master him. Once you master him, it's off to the final boss, who is a breeze in comparison. It should also be noted that blocking does very little for you in this game. You probably lose less health than if you don't block, but you still lose a ton of it. The visuals aren't awful considering the time this game came out, but they're also far from spectacular. There's some nice parallax here and there, along with the line-scrolling floor and decent colors. There's not a lot of inspiration in the backgrounds, and especially the character designs. In fact, there's very little personality in anything here, except the name. As with a lot of Super Nintendo games, there's substantial loading time between different screens and stages. The music isn't too bad. There's a few tunes here and there that are actually pretty damn good, with the rest being average but not offensive or anything. The sound effects are fairly muffled, but overall they do their job. All in all, it doesn't really get much more mediocre than this. Honestly, the name is the best thing about the game. That's right, punk, I am tough enough. I mastered the moves and I mastered you!
Let's check out Abba Docs, The Deadly Inner War for the NES. This game was developed by Natsume and released by Milton Bradley here in the US. Yes, the same Milton Bradley that made board games like The Game of Life and Mousetrap among many others. I guess they thought there would be good money in publishing video games as well. Luckily for us, we got Abba Docs. What exactly is an Abba Docs? Well, beats the hell out of me what it is, but according to the instruction manual, it's a planet that you live on. You play as Second Lieutenant Nasal. I didn't make that up, it says Nasal in there. You're the lone survivor of the Force, and you watch as your planet is swallowed by a huge parasite and everyone dies except for your girlfriend. I'm guessing she's sending you text via her phone to let you know that she's not dead and to come get her. So off you go in your suit, and the only way is to get inside the huge parasite. The game definitely looks and feels like Life Force by Konami in the sense that everything is organic. You'll be fighting your way through all sorts of levels that look like different parts of a body, but most of them look like they're intestinal in design. I like the look of all the levels, and they do look pretty nasty in spots. Some of the bosses are really gross looking, like this dog thing that has loose flesh hanging off its skeleton. Surprisingly, Nintendo let this go by with all the gory graphics and didn't require it to be toned down at all. The game plays on both side-scrolling and vertically scrolling levels. The vertical levels are different since they scroll down. It's kind of a nice change, but I do prefer the side-scrolling levels. Your character sprite is huge, which of course makes you an easy target. Getting hit once will get you killed and taken back to a checkpoint. You've got a couple of lives before your game is over though, and luckily you can continue on from the beginning of the level that you're on. And it will come to this since the game is very challenging. There's lots going on here in terms of enemies and bullets flying all over the place. The NES does pretty well, but the game will slow down at times and the graphics will start to flicker here and there. That's to be expected though with all that's happening. Powering up your ship is easy. Just collect the power-ups from the blue enemies that come at you. There's 4 different types of weapons that you can get along with missiles and orbiting shields. If you don't die and get powered up to the max, the game becomes much easier. But if you do die, then good luck because all your weapons are stripped and you start off with only your basic weapon and no speed. If you have a controller with a turbo feature, then use it since the game doesn't have one. The soundtrack is great and was composed by Kiyohiro Sada. This guy's made some great music for other games like Contra, Scat, and Bayou Billy to name a few. Definitely a soundtrack worth listening to. Abba Docs is a fun game even with the huge challenge. Just like a lot of shooters at the time, you can beat this one in under half hour if you're good enough. I wasn't good enough, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but I was still able to beat the game by cheating and using cheat codes. Yes, I cheated and I admit it, and don't act like you've never cheated on a game before because we're all guilty of it. Anyway, this is a good game to have in your collection, and you can for the small price that it's fetching these days. Under $5 if you don't mind a cartridge-only copy, and it's definitely worth that.
All right, there you go. Some games with some stupid names. Dave, what would you call, if it was up to you, what would you call Abba Docs instead of Abba Docs?
I'd probably call it Sidearms 3 or something like that.
Sidearms 3, really?
No.
What would you call Super Magnetic Neo instead of Super Magnetic Neo if it were up to you?
Big, ugly, fat-faced guy. I don't know. That's a good title.
A fantastic title.
I don't know. All I know is those are some just weird-ass names. I'm not into making titles, but, you know, the people that are, I think they could do a better job.
I agree. Anyway, what are some games that you guys feel have some pretty dumb names, and what would you call them? What would you call the games we talked about today?
Yeah.
Let us know, and in the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack.
All right, Joe, I think I've decided for the next episode I'm going to start out with some Downhill Damnation.
Or Chaka Khan.
Or how about Legend of Cage?
How about Pinguini Land?
Katamari Democracy.
Super Pooper?
Nipple Tail for the Dreamcast.
Or maybe Danky Kane Country?
Shampoo. Always a classic.
Ram Fart?
Wise Book 1 and 2. 5th edition.
Personal?
Ponix Wright. Ass Attorney,
Ratchet and Daxter,
Residential Evil 4,
Soul Feces,
Chai Chai Rodriguez's Pro Challenge Golf,
Garfilio on the Genesis.
or finally, how about Operation Wolf?
I don't know, Dave. None of these are really clicking with me.
Yeah, I agree totally, man. I think I'm just gonna go home and think about it maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, let me know what you come up with.
Yeah, see ya.
Ooh, Heckfire.